Hello, guys, and welcome to the Alternative Movement podcast, where we talk everything adaptive training. My name's Craig, your host, and today we are joined all the way from America on our Zoom call, Amanda Simmons. How are you doing, Amanda?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Not a problem at all. Cool. Yeah, so I mean, I came across you actually added me on Instagram, and I watched on your Instagram, and I saw a video you put up, one of your first videos, and it really sort of resonated with me, and it made me want to reach out to you and tell you what you was doing was amazing. And obviously it's led to this. It's led to us having a conversation, and you're going to tell us a bit about, hopefully, about your story and what's going on. So yeah, so Amanda, obviously I know why I've got you on here. Would you like to maybe go for a bit of your backstory and tell everyone else what we're going to be talking about today?
Sure, yeah. So in 2018, I was diagnosed with something called spinocerebellar ataxia type 6. It's a genetic disease that I inherited from my dad. And my dad actually, when he was diagnosed, his neurologist basically told him, you know, there's nothing you can do about this. It is a slow progression. He was, about 70 when he got diagnosed. And basically they said, if you have kids, which I'm the youngest of 5, if you have kids, they all have a 50-50 chance of inheriting this disease. But, since it showed up so late in you, and, your symptoms aren't that bad, I wouldn't really worry about it for your kids, which was really bad information. And my parents they told us, but we didn't, it didn't really sink in. They were kind of like, it's really not a big deal. If you guys have it, it won't even show up until you're really old, and it's not going to be a problem, and blah, blah, blah. And at the time, I looked into it a little bit, but there wasn't really much online that I could find. It's considered a rare disease. So, and there has not been very much research on it. So basically what I found online backed up my parents, what my parents were saying. So I kind of put it aside and went on with my life. And I had my personal training studio, and I was, just kind of doing my thing and didn't really think about it much. And, over the years, watching my dad's symptoms progress, and, continuing to kind of check in and see if there was any new information online. Basically, I started to notice things. This is where it gets a little bit hard. When people ask, when did you notice? The more I learn and the more that my symptoms progress, the more I make connections back to even when I was much younger.
So it's obviously been quite a slow sort of progression. Maybe you've not noticed it in yourself because it's been so slow and you didn't really know what you was looking for.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, and there's a little bit of, the lack of information that's out there, which, it is nice to have, groups where there are people who are sharing their stories, which is, that's kind of my motivation of doing any of the videos that I've done, is to try and make those connections with people, just because, health professionals are oftentimes, unless they specialize in something, they know very basic versions of, what's
surface
happening.
Level information.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I started noticing my symptoms, which were really, it was, I mean, it's really interesting because my dad, you know, he is into archery, and he was on he was out on an archery range, and he just fell, you know, out of nowhere. He's just walking along and just fell down, and was like, that's kind of weird. And his symptoms were all really, basically we were told, you know, if you start getting dizzy, if you start having balance issues, if you start having speech issues, you know, pay attention to that. And that wasn't what I first started experiencing. So I was actually quite surprised when I got tested and it came back positive for SCA6. So I don't know if that really kind of like answers the backstory on you know, my brain is a little bit random, so you know, I usually go the roundabout way of explaining things or telling stories, which now I understand. I've always been that way, and now I understand is probably just part of the package, you know.
Yeah. So is that part of the ataxia? Is it where you the thought process where you're quite random?
Okay. Yeah. It's there are a bunch of things that are very interesting, because at first they said this is just a balance, speech, movement, fine motor skills, you know, that it was lumped into a movement disorder. And then and that's how it's listed in a lot of stuff, that if you go online, that's kind of how it's listed. But there's actually a specialist, his name is Dr. Schmallman, Jeremy Schmallman, and he talks a lot about cognitive issues with spinocerebellar ataxias, and how, you know, there's a lot more to it and a lot more kind of going on, even down to like digestive issues, and stuff like that. So yes, my thought process and the way that I kind of like explain things is a very roundabout, you know. Yeah. But now it makes sense. I mean, my friends used to make fun of me when I was a kid, because they would say, you know, I was just like so random, and I'd be talking and I'd look over and one of my friends would be going like this,
trying to get your attention,
because well, that, and she said that I just grabbed things out of nowhere, like, oh, okay, right. You know, my thoughts are like blah blah, you know, it's just like, yeah. So at least it makes sense now.
Okay. So growing up, was you very heavily involved in sports?
You know, I would have been. My parents wouldn't allow us to play sports or be on any kind of team sport, unfortunately. But I was incredibly active growing up. I mean, we had, my brother and I are a little less than 2 years apart. And I was his, probably, you know, to me as a little kid, we were best friends. I'm sure that he was like, you're so annoying, but I followed him everywhere. I did everything that he did. We were really into skateboarding. At one point we had a unicycle gang where there were like 4 or 5 of us, and we would ride
unicycle gang. That's hardcore. That is,
you know, I mean, you don't mess with a unicycle gang, you know?
I mean, how do you even start to mess with a unicycle gang? Like, they're a league of their own.
Right. I mean, yeah, every single day, because I used to ride my unicycle to school, and I would, you know, lock it up, and after school I would go out and I would make
that's just so cool. I just got this image of someone riding to school on a unicycle now.
With a rat on my shoulder, you know, because I had a pet rat.
Oh wow.
I was that kid. Yeah, I was totally 100%. I was that kid. But I made the same joke every single day. You know, I'd go out and I would say, oh man, someone stole half my bike. And at first the kids thought it was kind of funny, and then they were like, "Oh, you're so stupid," you know. So
After you've told them
but
a few
yeah,
times.
you know, I don't know. But yeah, we did skateboards, BMX. I rode motorcycles,
Oh, cool.
surfing. You know, I mean, I was born and raised in California, so you know,
So it kind of
surfing,
comes with a package, doesn't
skateboarding.
it? Yeah,
Yeah,
that sort of
yeah.
lifestyle.
I was
Obviously,
the
go on, sorry.
oh, I was just going to say I was the wheelie champ of Redwood City for an entire summer. I could hold the longest wheelie on a bicycle. So
Okay, not on a unicycle, because I don't know if that would count, would it? If you could do the longest wheelie on a
yeah,
unicycle,
you
because
can't.
technically
I
you're
could
kind
do
of doing a wheelie the whole way through. Or I'd
yeah.
be very impressed if you could do
I
like no wheels on the floor.
oh man. Well, I could do some bunny hops. I was pretty good at bunny hopping on the unicycle. Yeah.
So you're quite an avid
So
runner now, aren't you? So back when you was younger, did you do a lot of running as well?
yeah, it's funny because I remember the day I started like really seriously started running. I, you know, I was like, I got to a point where, you know, I was kind of, I wouldn't say I was hanging out with the bad crowd because some of those people are still my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, you know, we weren't necessarily taking care of ourselves. I was a teenager and, you know, we were having a little too much fun. And
Yeah.
I, I woke up at one point and was like, you know, I do not want to be doing this into my 20s because it's not a good look, you know.
Mm.
So I put on the sneakers that I had, which were probably like a pair of Adidas shell toe sneakers. And I went out for a run and I ended up doing like 7 miles. And at the end of it, I was just like, this is my thing. I
Wow.
just loved it. And I started running a lot. And then a friend of mine, we were having coffee and, you know, I said, what are you doing tomorrow? And she said, I'm running that half marathon that I've been training for. And I was like, well, who are you running it with someone? And she said, no. And I was like, well, I'll do it with you. And I hadn't trained for that kind of distance. I'd been doing, you know, 6-7 miles at a time. And I got up the next morning at like 4 and we went and ran this half marathon. And, you know, from there I did the Honolulu marathon, and a lot of half marathons around the Bay Area. I did the one Honolulu marathon and I was like, I think I like half marathons better because that distance just felt really good to me.
And I guess you could push a little bit harder in yourself, I guess, in the shorter, well, I say short, it's quite a long run, but a shorter running compared to a marathon.
Yeah, exactly. And you still get, you know, yeah, you still get the pancakes afterwards and all that stuff. So
yeah, I don't mind a bit of running. I do a short amount of running, but yeah, sort of generally around about 5Ks is my limit, I find.
Yeah.
But still it's an enjoyable experience to run.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And I think the community behind it as well, like especially once you're in, like if you're in a running club or you're friends with runners, you go out running with a group, it's sort of that community feel. Much like most aspects of fitness, really. Like, so if you go into like your CrossFit gyms, your strength and conditioning gyms, or like your boot camps, and as I say, running clubs, you build such a strong community of people with that same passion, and it drives you and pushes you forward yourself.
Yeah, that definitely was a motivating thing for me, is just making those connections in that community, and you know, and branching out from there, you know, from just doing regular half marathons and stuff like that to really, because I used to live in the Bay Area, and the Bay Area has a ton of really, really great trails to run. And I got into trail running, which at the time for me was I was kind of a loner on that. It was more kind of like, because, you know, anyone back, you know, before my symptoms started to progress and stuff, I would try and get people to go out on the trails with me, and no one would go with me because they were like, what? I can't keep up with you. And there's like,
it's a different animal
torture.
though. It's a different animal, like road running, from going, if you're like a road runner going to trail running, it's just unpredictable because you'll have like different inclines and it's just learning how to pace yourself is very, very differently, I'd say. So that's probably why you got a lot of resistance in people wanting to go with you. They weren't down for it at all. So so is that how, so you said you owned a PT studio?
Yes.
So is that how you fell into that? Like, from the running, you built up the passion for fitness, and tell me a little bit about that. Yeah,
basically, let's see. I was actually selling decorative medals for a company in Oakland as a sales executive, salary, benefits, all that stuff. And I was sitting at a desk, some 10 hours a day, and I was just absolutely miserable. And I had been kind of like training friends for burritos, like, come to the gym with me, buy me a burrito,
It's not a bad price.
Especially in the Bay Area. We got some good burritos in the Bay Area.
Okay.
So that was kind of how it started. And somebody had said, you should think about doing this, as your career. And I did think about it for a while, and I was like, I don't want to be, I'm not, I didn't really fit into like the regular gym environment back in, because this was 2007. And I was like, every gym that I belonged to, the trainers were not like me. They were like, it was more about, the vanity training and competing in physique, competitions and stuff like that. And I was like showing up in Converse and, I didn't have a ponytail. And I was like, I don't know. And I didn't really want to work at a gym where I was just fed clients. I wanted my own space. And that's the other thing that now I understand. I am also, I get really distracted by crowds of people and noises, and like groups, because I was like, I don't want to be a group instructor, and I don't know that I could actually focus enough in a gym to train people. So I would have to have my own space where I'm training one-on-one with clients. And basically I came to the decision, sitting at this desk, that I had to make a change. So I got certified with the NASM. And I had one client and I quit my job.
Wow. You was committed.
Yeah, I was like, it's now or never.
I've got one. That's it. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, right. I was like, okay.
But I think that's fantastic. I think sometimes you need that urgency in order to grow your career, because if you was comfortable, you're still getting your salary every month. You're not going to be as driven. Whereas, I've not got a job. I'm now a personal trainer. I've got one client. I've got two choices. Either I'm going to end up homeless, or I'm going to make this work. And I think in your case, you made it work. Yeah. I did. And, my second client was my first client's wife. And then, it was all word of mouth, and I didn't have to do advertising or marketing or anything like that. I think it was a little bit different back then as well, because it's not even going back that far, really. But I guess like social media and all that sort of stuff wasn't as, even though it was a thing, it wasn't like it is today. Like, obviously, we're having this conversation now through because of Instagram. So it's just, them connections was more word of mouth.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And and so my, my business just kind of grew from there. And I would get up every single day at 4 a.m. and train 9 clients back to back. And I would start my workouts with a 2-mile run, and then I would work out for, at least an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then end my workout with another 2-mile run. And that was like 6 days a week. And, I had what seemed like endless amounts of energy, and my recovery was really fast. And then, obviously as the SCA stuff started to progress, I noticed, it was harder for me to get up and meet the demands of being with clients, and, my workouts and stuff like that started to kind of taper back because I just couldn't recover as quickly. And I just didn't have the energy. So, but I did that for 12 years. That was my business was 12 years. And, I was really, really happy doing what I was doing, and helping people. And, it's interesting because my style of training kind of, I would get a lot of clients who had some type of movement issues and compensations.
Okay.
Which is why I, with NASM, I did their CES and their PES and then I became one of their master trainers, which took me about, I think it was 8 years to get everything in order to become a master trainer. And my business turned more towards all the functional movement and all, one of my oldest, long-term clients ended up being diagnosed with Parkinson's. So I did a lot of work to kind of like figure out how to transition our training and adapt to, the demands of that for her. So
that's crazy how you've almost, as you just said, you was attracting them clients even before your diagnosis. Almost like you understood your niche and who it was you was meant to be working with. And right. It wasn't the sort of like the gym bunnies, or, as you said, like the vanity folks within the gym. That's amazing. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So it was, and that was when things started transitioning in that direction, was when I felt the most fulfilled in my work. Being able to see somebody who, was struggling to get up, from the toilet, something very, very, basic that most people take for granted. And because of the things that we did, they're able to go to the bathroom unassisted, or, like, I'm sure the work that you do, you see that, and the feeling,
absolutely.
Yeah. The feeling that you get knowing that, you're not just helping people look better, you're helping people feel and move better. To me, that was like the height of my work and the happiest I was.
Yeah. I mean, even though like being a personal trainer and working with, general population is very rewarding in itself. Definitely, as you just said, like the work I do, it's almost got that other element to it. And it's like, you are really, really making a difference to someone's life when, as you said, it's like silly things like getting up off the floor or getting up out of a chair, and you've just, flipped that person's world around. And so some of the guys I work with, it's easy to become complacent if you've got if you're in a wheelchair like full time, or if you can get around with crutches, to just stay in the chair and use that for the majority. And like for you or I, if we was to take a few weeks off or sit down for a few weeks and not train, we'd probably be fine. But for these guys, it would be a lot difficult to build that strength back up, and they would lose it a lot quicker. So 100%, I completely agree with you. It's super rewarding.
Yeah.
So you've done that for 12 years. How long ago have you still got your studio? Has your studio gone?
No, my studio's gone in March of 2020, with the shutdown and everything.
Oh.
Yeah, I closed my business, and I sold all my equipment basically. And yeah, I was moving towards kind of the idea of retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, it was getting harder and harder for me to maintain a schedule, because with my symptoms, like most people, they assume that that I don't have any struggles or issues if they just, if you just have a quick conversation with me, or you pass me on the street, you probably have no idea how hard I'm working just to walk up the street, or how much energy it takes just to communicate thoughts and feelings sometimes.
Because that was one of the things I saw one of your videos, and I think that you explained it quite well. You was talking about imagine if you was drunk.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, because I thought that was quite an interesting way to explain it.
Well, because it's because spinocerebellar ataxia, it affects the spinal cord, and it affects the cerebellum, and the cerebellum, is the ruler of all things balance related and speech. When you drink alcohol, the first thing that's affected is actually your cerebellum, and that's why your speech is affected and your balance is affected, because the cerebellum has to process the alcohol, and that's where that like drunk kind of feeling comes from. For me, if I'm just sitting still for the most part, I don't necessarily feel that kind of like drunk feeling, like things aren't like, I mean, my eyes move side to side all the time. So there's like glitches that happen.
So is it like a shudder sort of thing, or is it like a slow movement side to side?
It's really rapid. And that was actually one of the very first things that I noticed, is that whenever I was trying to write anything, my eyes just started uncontrollably shifting side to side. And I thought, I must just be tired. That's strange. That had never happened to me before. I'd never had something that was happening to my body that I couldn't control. If that makes sense. Like, there was no, and now there's I have cervical dystonia, so my head jerks around, and there are a lot of things that I have a very hard time controlling, but of course I lost my train of thought, because that's what happens. Like, where was I going with that? I don't even know.
That's fine. Because one of the things you said was when like when you're drunk and you're trying to talk, and you said about it was like, actually I had a couple of drinks the other night, so I remember what you were talking about. So it's like you're trying to explain to someone something, and you really have to think about the words you're saying, rather than like when you can just naturally just spill words out. So it's quite interesting how it affects your speech in that way. And as you said, like you're walking down the road and people are thinking, oh, having a normal day, absolutely fine, but you're like inside, you're like trying to hold everything together.
Well, and the grocery store has been like a really eye-opening and somewhat frustrating place for me, because I do have a hard time with noisy places, bright lights, lots of people moving around me makes things a lot harder for me. And decision making in those environments for me is much more challenging. So I've had a lot of people, unfortunately, I'll be standing in the produce section trying to figure out, like, what do I need? And I may be taking too long, and people do that, like, like what are you, come on, like, what are you doing? You're just standing there staring at the, bell peppers. What's your problem? And that's something that I kind of didn't really realize how kind of I don't want to use the word cruel, but humans just, like, it's like we don't stop and think, like,
naivety,
okay, this
I'd
person
say
is
it's more than cruel, because we don't understand what people are going through, and
exactly.
For you, you're just there looking at the peppers, and you've zoned out for a few seconds, and to you it's like, it is a few seconds, but to them it's like, come on, what are you doing? Hurry up, move on. We've got places to be, and and it must be quite, I guess, frustrating for yourself, I can imagine. But at the same time, it's like you can't blame someone, I guess, for being that way and being. I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? It's a tough one because if you want to be mad, like, if you knew what was going on, you wouldn't be saying this.
Well. And it's like, it's exhausting because you can't have a conversation with every single person that is irritated with you. And, it's like,
have you got 20 minutes? Let me just explain you exactly why it's taken me an extra 5 seconds to pick up a bell pepper.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you shouldn't have to explain yourself. And that's the thing. I think that's the thing you should remember. You shouldn't have to explain yourself,
Yeah. Well, our society, it's like, unless you're in a wheelchair, they think you shouldn't be in, the, special parking spaces at the grocery store. Or they don't, it's like it's almost like you have to prove that, you deserve that advantage or whatever they want to think it is, it's like, we just need to, as a society, obviously, we just need to be much more compassionate than we are.
Just be a little bit more patient. I think we live in a world where it's very rush, and everyone's got places to go. And because everything's at a tap of a button. You want something, you order it from Amazon the next day. I'm sometimes annoyed that it doesn't come that next day. I'm like, wow, what's happened? What's happened? I haven't got my product immediately. Whereas, like, going back 10 years ago, you'd have to wait a week, and that wouldn't be a problem. And it is the case, you want food, you press a button, you get your food there and then. And I think we've lost that patience as a society. And I think definitely doing this job, what I do, that's increased my patience tenfold. And I'd imagine, especially for yourself, working with others, like with like motor skill problems, you probably found your patience have come on like leaps and bounds.
Yep.
But,
I found that I
no, go on, sorry.
I found that I have a lot more patience than I, ever really realized before for things like that. And a lot less patience, with my clients over the years. I would, it's like the hyper focus on, getting a 6-pack or whatever, I just didn't have the patience for that. I was like, don't care.
No, that's no fun getting a 6-pack.
I mean,
you have to live so strict.
It's ridiculous. Well, and that was the thing. I kind of like, I realized, like, I did not have any desire to work on that aspect.
I'll say this one for me. I've never been a physique a trainer. I've never wanted to train anyone for physique. It's just it's not fun. So predominantly a lot of my training, obviously, other than the work I do with people with disabilities, I do a lot of strength and conditioning as well, and I run boot camps and stuff like that. And it's not so much, it's about lifting weights. It's about lifting weights, running around, having fun and enjoying it. And I think as soon as you start to put that, right, you've got to track your calories down to the gram, you've got to do this, it just becomes a little bit tedious, a little bit boring. And, you can't have fun with it. I like to pick it. I like to eat fast food from time to time. I like to eat, like tonight, in fact, Friday night is burger night. So I'm going to eat like 3 or 4 burgers and everything that goes with it. So, and then that's the thing people see on my social media. I eat a lot of junk food. I don't eat a lot of junk food, but I'll have them days where I'll just I'll pick out and like, how do you stay in shape? You eat all this crap food all the time. I'm like, that's the 10%. Like the 90%, I'm pretty good, but that's the 10%. I just like to put that up to wind you guys up, so you see it and think, how does he do this? Stay in shape and eat all that food. So for yourself, in regards to sort of like your training, how have you adapted your own training? So have you, obviously you said you do a lot of trail running, so have you done any, have you just changed your routes? Do you have someone run with you? Do you use a treadmill instead, like on potentially days you're not feeling as great?
Well, let's see, 2 years ago, I had 2 back-to-back falls on my trail runs. And when I was first diagnosed, I met with a neurologist who specializes in what they consider movement disorders. And he said, I want you to keep running until you start falling down, and then we're going to reassess from there, which I was like, I had never, ever in all of my years and all the crazy runs that I ever did. And, I used to race bikes as well. I used to do road racing. That was in like early 2000s. And, never had a crash. So when he said, when you start falling down and reassess, I kind of was like, I'm not going to,
That's not going to happen.
And then, I was out for a run and I fell, and I was like, that was weird. The first fall, I actually thought I broke my left collarbone, and I had to get a ton of x-rays and stuff. And it was just, some muscle strain and stuff like that. And then I contacted my neurologist, and he said, you know what, I do not want you giving up. So get back out on the trail, and keep running. And 10 days after the first run, the first fall, I fell again. And that second fall was pretty bad. Wow. I ended up with a frozen shoulder that 2 years later is just now starting to get range of motion back. So I haven't been trail running. So I am only running on flat, basically paved surfaces. I would love to try trail running again, but I would have to find somebody to go out with me. And, my wife says that she's like, she wants to go out with me, but she hates exercise. Like she hates exercise. Yeah. She's like, so if I can get her on board, I would hit the trails again. I did get some walking sticks. So if I'm having a really, really rough day, or if I'm feeling really unsteady, when I go out, typically my run will turn into more of a walk, and I'll have my walking sticks.
Like a Nordic walk or a power walk sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So in 2018, when I was diagnosed, because of my eye movements and stuff like that, my neurologist told me no more cycling. So I had to give up cycling. And it's interesting because I have been riding bikes since when I was 5. My dad, my parents loved garage sales, which is like in the United States of America is like, garbage sales. Basically, people are like, I have all of this garbage and I don't want it
we have
anymore.
a similar thing in England called boot sales. So but you don't do it out of your garage. You'll go to like a field and open your boot and then have like a table and lay all your rubbish. You're like, I don't want this junk. Do you want it? But I've found some awesome stuff on boot sales. I'm terrible. I'm the sort of person that walk past a skip and go, oh, I wonder if that bit of wood would fit, I don't know, this project I'm doing.
That was my parents and my dad. You know, I was 5 and we were at a garage sale, and there was this little blue Schwinn bicycle, and you know, my dad said, if you can ride it home, you can have it. And basically, because I was the youngest of 5 and he had already taught 4 kids how to ride bikes, he was like, I'm done. Like, you are on your own. If you want to ride bikes, you figure it out. And I hopped on that bike and I crashed probably 100 times, but I made it back to the house. And I absolutely loved riding bikes from like 5 years old on. So when I started, you know, cycling seriously, a friend of mine actually was a professional cyclist, and she's, you know, we went out on a couple rides and she said, I think you should start racing. And I found a local team, and I started racing with them, and I absolutely sucked. Really bad at competition. But I really got into, you know, riding with friends, and I had a really good group of friends. And we would go out quite regularly for rides together. And the last ride that I went on, I noticed, and this was before my diagnosis, I noticed, you know, when I was checking to see if there was a car, I looked to my left and I just started veering to the right off the road, which had never, ever happened to me before. And it's a very dangerous thing, especially when you're riding with a group and you're kind of like, you know, everyone rides really close. And if you make one mistake, you know, you can take out. Up. Exactly. So you know, when I told my neurologist, he said, I'm really sorry, but you can't go out. You can't go out on the road anymore. And at the time, I got really wrapped up in being so sad about that I didn't even consider the possibility that I could adapt that I could get a recumbent trike that would be much safer and still get
that fitness
and still be able to go out. Yeah. And it really took me until probably just last year. I didn't even think of that as a possibility. So now, you know, I'm looking into recumbent trikes and potentially getting back out.
Some of them recumbent trikes are really cool.
I know. Yeah. I
want some real good ones.
I want one with like hydraulics and a little, you know, little motor on it.
That would be awesome. Yeah, definitely. I've seen a few of them about, and a few guys on Instagram using. You get some off-road ones for trails as well, so that would be cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So yeah, those are kind of like some of the ways that I've adapted. As far as like the actual strength training and stuff like that, you know, I wouldn't say that I was heavily into CrossFit in 2007, 2008, but I went to a CrossFit gym in Oakland. And actually before I signed up for CrossFit, I was like, because I had a lot of clients who were asking me about it. And I was always the type of trainer to say, well, let me check it out and see what I think, whether it was diet related or an exercise fad or something like that. I always wanted to like check it out. So I found a CrossFit coach and I trained with him privately for a couple months before going into the group environment. Cause I had deadlifted and I'd done stuff like that, but I'd never attempted any snatches or
I think going from like training in a standard gym to CrossFit, you see people. I don't coach at a CrossFit gym, but I coach at a strength and conditioning gym, which is pretty similar to CrossFit. And as soon as you go, right, okay, we're going to do a squat snatch, guys, and they're like, what's a
Yeah.
squat snatch? Let me show you. And then you see their faces like, right, okay, guys, let's break this down. Let's make this simple. We're not going to expect you to do a crazy movement like this without any practice.
Well, my first session with this private CrossFit coach, I waltzed in there, and I think at the time I was probably, I don't know, I'm like barely 5'5", and 108, 110 pounds. And I waltzed in there never having done, a heavy back squat, like nothing like that. And I said, I want to go to the CrossFit Games next year. And he was like, he looked at me and he just laughed hysterically. And I was like, why are you laughing at me? And he was like, because it takes years and years and years to build those skills. But obviously I never made it to the CrossFit Games. But I did, have a lot of fun. And I think my max deadlift was 312 pounds. And all of that stuff, I pretty much have had to stop doing to a certain extent, just because unfortunately my spine is a complete disaster. So all of my discs are, herniated and degenerating, and I've got all kinds of issues. So the really, really heavy stuff, I can't do anymore.
No,
unfortunately, no. So I don't even have a barbell in my gym here at my house. I've just got, dumbbells and stuff like that. And on days where I'm not feeling so stable, I make sure that everything that I do, I've got something I can grab onto if I lose my balance. My workouts are a lot shorter than I'm used to, because I just don't have the reserves. My muscles fatigue really, really quickly. I mean, I don't really even have to work that hard until I feel, all of my muscles burning. Mm-hmm. So I've had to adapt my training around that quite a bit. And, recovery, it takes a very long time. So I basically, where I may have been, used to working out 6 days a week, I may work out today and not be able to work out for another couple days, and just have to do kind of like recovery stuff.
Yeah, but you are able to do, even if it is like active recovery, as you say, whether it's like a walk or a cycle or something like that, you're still able to do something. And I think that's the most important thing, especially for someone like yourself that's I don't like to use the term I normally get people say you're obsessed with fitness, you're a fitness junkie. I'm like, how's that a bad thing? You're making it sound bad. But yeah, for someone like us that love training and it's our passion, and then just so happens to be our career as well, to even like hurt, like I remember I cut my finger once and I thought, oh damn it, I've cut my finger. But then the fact you can't train and do certain things, like, God damn it, I just want to lift this heavy weight, but I keep hurting myself. It's very tedious, and I can imagine even more so for yourself. And how have you coped with that mentally? Like, obviously going from someone that's super active, like out all the time, running, cycling, lifting heavy weights, to obviously having to give up the heavy weights and not go out on your trails. How have you coped with that in yourself?
Well, it's interesting because 2018, I got my diagnosis. 2019, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she actually passed.
Oh God, sorry.
It was, and then in 2020, the pandemic happened. So 2018, 2019, 2020 were really, really, really rough.
Tough years.
Very rough. And, it's interesting because, I've definitely hit some really rough patches emotionally. And in my mind, I just have to keep telling myself, you just have to get up. You have to get up. You have to move, because, movement for me, exercise, just being active, not even, I used to always tell my clients, you don't have to call it exercise. What I want you to do is I want you to move with intention every single day. You're not just passively going out on a walk. You have to recognize that walk is, not to sound like dramatic, but is saving your life.
Yeah. It's something you're doing now to benefit you in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if that future is in 10 minutes, right? Because I mean, getting a diagnosis, knowing that, because I'm well aware of the fact that within 5 years, I could be in a wheelchair. Like the neurologist that I first saw was like, yeah, worst case scenario, you're in a wheelchair and you're unable to swallow. And he said it so like,
so blasé,
just like unable to swallow. Oh, who needs to swallow? I don't need to swallow. Do you need to like, what? When you hear something like that, especially when, I had a chiropractor one time when I was injured say, what are your hobbies that don't include exercise? And I was like, none. I have none. Everything I love to do, that has brought me like joy involves, some form of intense exercise or movement of some sort that is, pushing me beyond my comfort zone. That's like what has, that's like my mental health remedy. That's kind of what I do. So I did, after my diagnosis, I've gone through stages where it's like, I got super, super down, especially when my mom passed, and like, there is that temptation to just throw your hands up, and kind of give up because there's just so much heaviness, it's like this diagnosis, my mom passing, pandemic, fires, all this stuff. But I really, truly 100% know that no matter what, I just have to keep moving. If I don't, it's like, it's going to get me.
Yeah. Like that 5 years could be 2.
Exactly.
If you don't do something about it.
Right. So that's what motivates me is, because there's also the heaviness of not wanting to be a burden. And I don't know if you have had kind of these conversations with your clients.
Yeah.
But, it's like the idea of, especially being a really independent person, who is, I've always been able to contribute. And the idea of A, not contributing financially, B, getting to a point where, my wife may have to bathe me, like, that is hard to wrap my head around.
And have you had that conversation with her? And how was she sort of, I'm assuming she said she's fine with whatever happens either way.
Yeah, she, having a supportive spouse. I mean, she's on all the, support groups on Facebook. The caregiver support groups have been amazing. She's constantly getting feedback from people. And she's my rock. She's incredibly amazing and strong, and is always reassuring me, you could never be a burden, because I do sometimes go down that path where I'm like, I hate this. This is just terrible, and I have, I usually give myself like 24 hours and then I'm like, okay, back to work. You just gotta You just got to
just
keep
write
on
it off
moving
as
forward.
as a few negative thoughts, and then just get back on the horse and
Yeah, and that's
push through.
in the, you know, in our community and society in general, there's this term like toxic positivity, where, you know, it's like we have to be able to, you know, be honest and say, today really sucks and I really hate having this. I will always look for the silver lining and I will always make the best of my situation. But there are days where it is overwhelming, and we have to be able to admit that and be vocal about it without people being uncomfortable. Because a lot of times, you know, people will say, how are you? And if I'm honest, if I'm having a really, really bad day, you know, oftentimes people don't want to hear that. They want to hear, oh, I'm okay, you know, because it makes them uncomfortable to know that somebody that they care about is suffering.
Yeah, and they're not able to do anything about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, you know, in our community, I feel like a lot of times, and you see it a lot on, you know, Instagram, where there's this expectation to post this kind of like rosy facade, like, look at me, I'm so strong, and I'm, you know, but it's like, there's a balance, right? We all have really, really, you know, bad days, and we need to be able to be honest about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think for me, you'll know when I'm having a bad day or a bad couple of days, because you won't see anything online. I'll just go a little bit quiet for a few days, and I won't be doing any stories. I'll just be sort of wallowing. But I think that's the important thing. And I'll always turn back to this phrase: we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it. And that's the thing. And I think if you was to sort of go, you know what, I'm going to give up, and you sat in the corner and you just moaned and you was grumpy all the time, and that's what's really going to be a burden to everyone else. But having this positive attitude like you've got, where you're driven, you're like, no, I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep positive. I'm going to, you know, and exactly what you've done with Instagram. You know, you've created a page solely to raise awareness around what you're going through, and I think a lot of people are going to find comfort in that and support in that. So have you yourself, have you made a lot of connections through Instagram since you've been being a bit more of an advocate behind cerebellar ataxia?
Yeah, you know, I have friends on Instagram. I used to be on Facebook, but that was like emotionally way too much, so I just kind of like dumped the Facebook.
I think Instagram's a lot better. I think it's sort of growing as a platform. I found Facebook, as you just said, it's a bit worries me, whereas Instagram's a little bit different. It's a lot more supportive, and it can be real niche to what you want it to be. Like, you know, I've got 2 Instagram pages. I've got my PT, S&C, one-to-one type stuff, and then I've got my alt movement, and they are very specific to them niches and what it's about. And I'm only really seeing positivity, and whereas Facebook, you find a lot of negativity, I think.
I feel like that's true. But, you know, I feel like there is so much support out there, and, you know, regardless of religious or political beliefs, you know, we as a community are more and more just kind of like supporting each other. And, you know, I feel really encouraged by that. Yeah.
So how important is it to you to make people more aware of ataxia?
You know, it is really important, because the more people that are aware, the more chance for us to get research done, you know, for funding for research and things like that, because there just hasn't been that much.
Excuse the sort of the term, but it's not a popular condition or anything. Like, it's not cancer, where cancer gets a lot of the limelight and stuff like that, and the funding, the charity work and stuff. Whereas I mean, for me, ataxia is only something I've really sort of recently sort of been looking into. I've got a client who has it as well, so that's something I've become extremely sort of dedicated to find out as much as I can about.
It's so you know, raising awareness around it. I also participate in research studies. You know, I'm going to be participating in a study starting in September where I meet with a team at UC San Francisco for once a year for 5 years, just to kind of like track progress and stuff like that. So that maybe they can kind of like, you know, figure out, you know, more about, you know, how we can potentially find ways to slow it down. You know, I mean, it would be amazing if they could find a cure, but everything I've heard is that isn't even an option or possibility for, you know, at least another 20 years. And because it's a neurodegenerative disease, you know, if they can find something that'll stop it in its tracks, it can't reverse anything, you know? So like, for instance, for my dad, if they found something that could stop it in his tracks, his speech would never improve, you know, his balance wouldn't improve, but it wouldn't,
it wouldn't get worse.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you've almost found something that is slowing it down with what you're doing with training. Like that is going to ultimately, the stronger you are, not just mindset, but in yourself, that's going to have a huge impact on how quickly something like that would progress.
Yeah. And I think diet, you know, I try not to get too much in the diet aspect of things with people, just because over the years, you know, my business name was, you know, fitness and nutrition. And I got a nutrition consultant degree from a college in Santa Cruz. And then I don't know if you're familiar with Precision Nutrition. I got certified with them when they were very, like, in 2008, maybe 2009. I actually met John Berardi at a thing called the Meeting of the Minds in San Diego, and was sitting next to Paul Chek.
Okay.
Wave at, you know who Paul Chek is?
No, go on.
So Paul Chek, I mean, if you Google him, he's like, I don't know, he's like the grandfather of integrative functional movement. You know, I don't know where he is now. I mean, he's kind of fallen off the face.
Yeah. I've just Googled him. I recognize him. Yeah.
That's it. So, you know, over the years, I was really interested in focusing on talking about nutrition with people. And then I got so sick of it that I was just like, this is like not my thing. But in terms of, you know, dealing with my symptoms, I know that, you know, there are things that I do that help by keeping my nutrition, you know, even just like making sure I'm eating enough, you know, because a lot of times I don't have much of an appetite. And if I go a couple days where I just really don't feel like eating that much, I mean, you know, the pain, the muscle aches and the burns and the fatigue and stuff obviously is going to be worse,
because you're not recovering properly, and also you're just low in energy because you've not eaten.
Exactly. So
I mean, what message would you have for anyone else in a similar situation to you? I mean, what would you tell them? What would you tell them in regards to how they should potentially cope with it, how they should adapt their training, what they should do in order to, like, maybe support networks? Where could they find support networks?
Right. I think the most important thing is, you know, to obviously educate yourself, do your research and understand what you are dealing with, instead of kind of like being passive, like being active in, the research and understanding, and also reach out to the support groups, and make those connections with people so you don't feel so alone, because it can be a really lonely thing, and it's very easy to slip into the, why is this happening to me, and feeling isolated. So pushing yourself to reach out and make those connections, I think, is really helpful. And just the worst places for me are the past and the future. Those places are very dangerous for me, because in the past, it was, of course, because your mind has this way of playing tricks on you. In the past, I was like a superhero, right? Yeah. I'm like, I could do anything, nothing ever hurt. And I could run a marathon and go to a dinner party and do it, and it's like, okay, that's potentially mostly true, but, I have the tendency to kind of like obsess on what you used to be able to do, or how you used to
living in the glory days.
Yeah, totally. And then the future is just as dangerous for me, because when I like time travel, it's like, I'm not going to be able to swallow. Like, what the hell am I going to do if I can't swallow? So, really just trying to, wake up every day and be like, okay, this is where I'm at. How do I feel today? And what am I capable of?
Like really living in the moment.
Absolutely. That's the only safe space for me is, right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. That's a really great way to put it, to be honest with you. Live in the moment, and the dangerous places are either side of that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, your story, when obviously I come across your Instagram profile and I watched that video. Yeah, as I say, I watched it. I thought, oh my God, I've got to have this woman on my podcast. I've got to talk to her. Like, I just think she's so motivated and really wants to help people and show people that even if they're dealing with this, there is solutions, there is options, there is support. Whether that be online, whether that be with your family, whether that be through just adapting your training, and then and just not wallowing in self-pity, which that's something I don't think you've done. And you're allowed to have down days, as you said. Have your down days, learn from them, and then when you're up in the morning, try your best. Yeah. Well, I think we should leave it there. But honestly,
before I start rambling.
No, not at all. I mean, I could talk for ages, and I'm sure you could as well. Yeah. But I mean, you've been amazing, and then and I'm going to continue following your journey and what you're doing, and the people you're going to help along the way. And I think it's going to be absolutely awesome. Amanda, you've been amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's I really appreciate you accepting my invitation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, everything you're doing, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem at all. Amanda, thank you so much. And I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers.